Hey guys, Jeremy here with Simple Life. What we're going to do today is we're going to try and take this 5-ton electric log splitter and turn it into a forging press. This is from Princess Auto. I want to thank Princess Auto for sponsoring this video. To tell you the truth, for what I'm looking for, I think it's going to be fairly successful. I'm not looking to forge large billets of Damascus, rather make my own Damascus for knife-sized pieces. So, first things first, let's open this thing up, make sure it works, see how it works, and then we'll come up with a game plan to modify it for forging.
Please note this log splitter is not designed to be used in this way, and should you decide to make any modifications, as I'm about to do, you're doing so entirely at your own liability.
Now it says, no sale is final until you're satisfied. What if I don't like how this works as a forging press? I think I might just turn it on, see what happens. All right, log splitting test. Oh yeah. It works. But snap, I like that. I almost just want to use it as a log splitter. This is fun. Pachow! Oh, that is too easy. Yeah. Never, ever used a log splitter in my life. I think they're pretty cool. Okay, enough of that.
All right, so this first part we're going to tackle is a piece of shafting that goes into the actual ram on the cylinder itself. Now, the way that this log splitter came is that shafting had different holes in it, and so you could stick it out more or less depending on the general size of the rounds. I decided to replace that with a piece of 1 1/4" shafting that I had just out in the shipping container. If you don't have 1 1/4" shafting and a lathe, obviously this might not be that easy to do, but you could just use that section that came with it. There's no reason that I didn't do that, except for the fact that I would like to keep this, if possible, able to go back to being a log splitter. So what I did there is I just faced the end, I drilled a center hole just so we can have a place for our live center. Now, if you're not familiar with lathes and lathing, as Jimmy DeRista would say, this live center here, essentially it supports the end of the shafting. That way, if I'm making a really long cut, I think we're about 10, 11 inches away from the chuck, that far end is supported and we'll get a nice, clean, consistent cut. So I didn't have to take too much off here to get it to fit inside of the cylinder. The next area we're going to tackle is the part that's going to slip onto the blade of the log splitter. And for this, I just cut some pieces of 1/4" plate and kind of measured them out, guesstimated where they should be, guesstimated the angle, and then did a tack, made sure it looked good, and then welded it up. Now, obviously, if you know anything about welding, the way that I'm welding this would actually cause this angle to open up. So I did put it in the vise after and kind of squish it down a little bit. But this is going to be the basis. We're going to weld a piece onto the back of that, and then there'll be a pipe coming off of the front of that, and that will kind of be like our anvil portion of the press. I couldn't get a ground to stick to here for the life of me. This was about 4 times speed. I was really close to swearing, like really close to swearing when I was doing this. And my spool gun goes out and loses a bunch of wire. Oh, You know, sometimes adulting is hard, and same with welding. Always cracks me up when people say adulting is hard. Now, when I had welded this all together, I had a really nice precision fit, a little too tight, and then I just took a sanding disc on a grinder and just ground off that thick powder coat paint that's on here. And after that, it was just a really nice, snug fit. So this was a piece of scrap steel tubing that I had, and this will be that pipe that we're going to use. Really, for materials, most all of this was stuff that I had existing. So very precise layout here, kind of take a look, guesstimate, you know, what looks right. I actually ended up making this piece twice. The first time I cut it all out on the bandsaw, and it kind of got squirrely on me, and this is actually my second attempt. Where I would just cut the top part and then the bottom part. Before I was cutting, you know, if the bands, I'd be cutting the top and the bottom together, and it just didn't work out very well. I could have possibly filled the gaps in with weld, but I wanted something a little better than that. We're talking 5 tons of force potentially here, and I don't I don't want something that's a little cattywampus when I'm standing in front of it with a hot piece of steel. So this second time we got a much better, more precise fit to that little wedge. And then thinking too that once we weld this whole thing together, you know, we're going to kind of add a lot of strength to this whole issue. So I'm just trying to clean off the rust here, get as decent of welds as I can do. My welder's a piece of HUD too. It's not doing so well. Sometimes it doesn't feed, but I would like a new welder eventually, new MIG welder. But I spaced this thing off with a 1/4-inch piece of steel, just so we could make sure it wasn't right on the frame. Do the old eyeball guesstimation, and we'll tack her in. Those rascally little ground clamps. So I put the pipe onto the press, and we're at the point now where I could actually start squishing stuff. So I had this scrap piece of steel, and I just couldn't help myself. I was actually really impressed. So the part of the project that we're at now is going to be cutting out a little circle, and this is going to cap off that pipe that we had just put down. I'll also be drilling a hole in this and then welding in a piece of shafting. And I'll be using that piece of steel that's laying down on the table, that pipe. I'll make some collars out of that will slide over the shafting, and that'll be how I hold my dies. So this is the hole that we're going to be drilling, and we're going to put a shaft in here, and it'll be pretty much the exact same setup as on the ram side. Now, if you didn't have a lathe and you couldn't do all this stuff, you could always just come up with a slightly different way on the anvil portion to hold a die. A lot of people will weld some angle iron, make like a little channel that the dies will slide into. That's one option too, but I just figured, you know what, this way I can, you know, keep the dies the same on both sides, and not a big deal for me, obviously, but if you don't have a lathe, I think there's other ways you could do this. A lot of times in the comments, I kind of get the sense that people really get hung up on the exact way that something was done. I don't ever look at these YouTube videos, these projects like that. This is just kind of me showing you a method of accomplishing something, a way to do something. You know, there's so many different ways to accomplish similar tasks, and what I try to share here is more just inspiration, right? This is an idea. And I honestly had no clue how I was going to do this until I started. I thought I was going to use angle iron and somehow, you know, hold on plates that had the dies on them. But I'd never seen it done this way before, and just from what I was looking at it, this seemed like a very easy, simple way to go about it. So I ended up having to kind of take a little shoulder in there so I could get a real precise fit, trying to be as precise as possible, all while hoping that the welds don't distort things too much. Really, I want the shafting, on the anvil side and the ram side to be very much in line with each other. Obviously, that's fairly important when you got two dies coming together. It would make it easier the way we build the dies. And so I'm just trying to take the precautions and make this as precise, relatively speaking, as I can along the way, hoping that when it all comes together, it kind of works. So now that we've got that shaft welded in there, I'm going to turn this little donut, this little circle, to the shaft. And then I'm actually going to machine in a little shoulder that will sit inside the pipe. And that will basically reference that shaft in the dead center of that pipe, hoping that that pipe is in line with the ram. And once we got that inside diameter correct, I'm just machining a chamfer so we've got a nice place to lay a real hot and heavy bead. I want to make sure the sucker's welded really well. And that there is the basic portion of the anvil of this forge press. When you boil it down to its pieces, I mean, it's really quite simple. There's not an awful lot to it. So these are the collars that I cut. I cut 4 of them. I drilled them. I forgot to have the camera rolling. And then I just tapped them here to 3/8. And I've got these little 3/8 set screws that we can use. And so these will be welded to the dies. And I'll just use the set screw to hold them in place so that they don't fall off in the middle of forging. Now these guards protect the spring, the return spring, from getting wood chunks and stuff in them. They also have that little angled up part that I think is just to kind of cradle logs. Well, that's obviously going to be in our way, so we're just going to cut it off. So this was one of the more sketchier parts of the project. To weld these collars on, I wanted to make sure that the dies were aligned real nicely, so I just used the forge to hold pressure on there while I tacked these into place. Probably not the safest way to do this, but it worked really well. And then we put a lot of heat on those suckers, welded them up the entire way around. Again, lots of pressure here. Don't want any of this stuff coming off.
All right, so I think we're pretty much done with this portion of the build. We've got this thing done. Not entirely sure I like the way that I'm using to mount my dies with the set screw in there. What I might do, and this would actually, I would have to make these collars exact. I made 4 of these up so that I could put different dies on these different collars. I might remake these collars with very specific hole placement because I just kind of guesstimated what looked like the center, drilled the hole, which works fine if I'm going to use set screws. But what I would like to do is have this set up so that I push the die all the way flat so the die is resting on the ram, and then have a pin just for retaining it, just so when we draw it back that they don't slide off. So that might be something I would look at. That way when I swap out dies, it's literally pull a pin, put a new die in, put a new pin, and I'm done. So I'm gonna make some more of these dies. These are 1.5" by 1.5", but this is, I think, a little too wide. Obviously I'm gonna want some pinching dies, like some rounding dies, so I can really draw out material. And then some more for like flattening things out once we get it to the thickness we want, get it nice and even. I'm just going from what I think this thing's gonna do because I've never ever used a hydraulic forge press ever. just watch people do it on YouTube. But happy with how this is, and this thing can go back completely to being a log splitter. All I have to do is pop this sucker out, and this comes off, and then we can pull this out, and boom, put the other piece in here, and it's a log splitter. So one thing I might do that I'm considering is making a place down here where I actually weld a tab and I would bolt it into this main frame just so that I can eliminate this from coming up at all. I'm going to use it a little bit and see if it's a problem. I mean, this is rigid for sure, but I wonder if having a couple straps that I can bolt in, you know, just drill and tap right down in here, again, so that it's not a permanent forge press. If I wanted to use it as a log splitter, I could. But what I'm going to do now is I picked up, let me grab this thing, picked up a little tiny foot switch, and this was way smaller than the than the picture looked like on the internet, but this is rated for 15 amps, which is what this draws. And what I think I'll do is I'm just going to open this up. I'm going to hardwire this button, so it's going to be, I'm just going to close that circuit, so this will be out of the picture, and then I will just run it with this little foot switch. So I plug this into my power source, I'd plug this into here, and then I can run this wherever I want. That'll start the motor. And what I'm thinking of doing is a little linkage that when I press down on this, it will pull down on this arm. I want it to be a single motion. So I just have my foot that starts the motor, that engages the lever. It'll move. When I let off, it all comes back. That way I can use two hands. If I wanted to do, you know, other handheld dies or something, I can manipulate them that way. But I think I'm also going to be mounting this on the wall of the C-can. It's turned out pretty good so far. I'm happy with it. I just really hope that doing all this work, it actually works the way I hope it will. Okay, let's plug this thing into the switch. Plug this into power. Ah, this is already an improvement. This being here, we're gonna have to modify this. Oh, greasy hands are hard to work with. Oh, that wasn't bad. Cool. I think what I'll do is I'll just knock that roll pin out, and then I'll heat this up. I'm gonna mark where I wanna bend it right now. So I often get asked, a lot of people wonder what this thing is here. And this is just a set of Starrett pin punches. Very handy to have a precision set of pin punches. And so I get some safety glasses on. Not that this is dangerous, but you never know. Okay, so put this in there. Find the appropriate pin punch. Oh yeah, right there. Uh-oh. Okay, got it just long enough. There, cool. We want that gone. Boy, that's on there real good. I'm not joking around, were they? Oh, did you see that? It hit my safety glasses. That's exactly why you put on safety glasses. You know, I started out driving a pin, ended up smashing this thing, and it went flying, hit my glasses. Oh, I like safety things. Oh. It's threaded. Way to go, Jer. Yeah. Roughly straight. I think that might work. All right. I've got memories. Oh, there it is. A little something something that might come in handy on this project. Oh, it's the wrong way though. That still could work. Still could work. I always thought this would be cool for a hot rod project, but seeing as I don't really do car things, it might be just as good for a forge press project. All right, drilled that out to 1/8 of an inch. That's the same size as this one, so thinking that I might be able to do like a clevis type thing and then use a roll pin. I've got a bunch of roll pins out in the sea can. Just clean this up with the handheld countersink. I'm gonna put this together quick. Get this roll pin started. There she be. And then we'll take a look at that little foot lever that I have, how we'll mount that, and kind of figure out where underneath that thing the switch will go, and then roughly how much play we will require, how much travel rather.
So I tested it out a little bit, and indeed this ram was kind of being pushed up just a little bit. So I cut 2 tabs and welded them on. What I did was I drilled 2 holes at the bottom, welded them, and then once they were on, I just kind of transfer drilled through there and tapped them out. So they're tapped into the main frame. I can remove them, and it actually did a really good job at letting that cylinder not come jacking up when I had a lot of pressure on it. Now, I didn't film this part, but I made a little base for this foot pedal that I had, that foot weird looking thing. And I took apart this little switch, drilled 2 holes in it, tapped holes into this main plate. That way it won't move around. And the idea being that this base plate's got some girth to it. That is 1/2 inch thick steel. I've been using that piece of steel for a long time. That was originally the base of my horizontal belt grinder. But we're just kind of getting this thing set up, and then I also drilled a hole in that little side of the pedal that flares up, and from there I can put some type of a linkage going up to the lever. Now we're out in the shipping container. You know, this is the part of the project where I just get so impatient. I just want it done, and I don't get too crazy with the filming towards the end of projects, it seems. But what I did here, I just kind of measured out the height, and I designed this so that the regular anvil, my one that I have, will slide underneath it. And then I also put this so that when the forge is folded into the wall, this is right up against it. So trying to keep this thing as tight as compact. Obviously the shipping container is a multi-purpose shipping container for me. I want to be able to forge out here, but we also have quite a bit of storage of toys that has to go on in here as well. This is all just scrap steel that I had laying around, and just wanted a simple shelf. We could slide it out. I welded some tabs at the end so I couldn't pull it off, but I thought this was actually a pretty good solution. And then obviously I'd wanted to get this done before I figured out the exact way to get all of my linkages set up.
Alrighty, I'm pretty excited about this. I have decided just to leave this hooked up with a piece of mechanics wire for right now. So say if I'm standing in front of the dies right here and I'm forging, it's a little bit of a step. Like, that's a pretty big step for me. It may not look like much in the camera, but I'm not crazy about this. But I am excited about this. Little recap. Very, very, I wouldn't say simple, but it's not overly complicated. Really, there wasn't a whole lot of fabrication. It did take a while. I'm actually amazed how long this took me. But we took this log splitter, $399. We swapped out this shaft that goes in here, made our dies. I also have flattening dies for it. This piece right here is bolted onto there, and then it just lifts off. So this can be put back to being a log splitter at any moment. And then I still have this original ram for log splitting. So if we want to use it as log splitter, we can just pull it off of here. We're good to go. With these supports, I'm not worried about this thing falling off. With the weight that we've added to this end, I mean, yeah, this thing isn't going anywhere. And I set this at 16 inches out so that when this is put away and we're not using it, and when the forge is folded in, they'll be the same amount away from the wall, 16 inches. And the reason I care about that is because my sons park their motorcycles right here, their dirt bikes. I park my dirt bike in there. And I know that with this here, with their bikes parked here, I've got room to get my motorcycle in and out. So that's kind of what I wanted to go with. Now, what I might do in the future is maybe put like this pedal right over here and maybe like a linkage going over so that I can pull this straight down. I tried bending that little bar there, and it was just too flexy and too Mickey Mouse. Not that this isn't Mickey Mouse, but there it is. I'm excited about this. I'm really stoked. Let's see, capacity right now. This is something I'm sacrificing a little bit, but again, I've never done forging before, so I can do 15 inches. And quite frankly, I think for me getting into this, me learning about this, I mean, there's going to be so much that I need to learn, I don't know about. I think this is going to serve me very well. So I think it's high time we fire up the forge and see how well this actually works. I'm excited.
Oh my word! Oh my word!
I was not expecting that. My goodness, that's effective. So one thing I think is happening, I think this starting capacitor doesn't quite have the capacity to keep up with constant small cycles. As I get a couple into it, you can tell the motor's not wanting to start. Like, it's fine there, but once we do a few of them, it seems that it hesitates a little bit. So that might be something I'll have to address somehow. I did not expect it to squish that hard. I like that.
Uh-oh. Look at that.
That's just 2 heats. I'm absolutely amazed at how well this thing is working. I think we're going to need to make some dies out of some better material. I like this thing. Well, we've really wrecked this thing, but look at that. I can tell you, I am so excited that this actually worked. You know, I've seen a couple YouTube videos here and there, and maybe I didn't find the right ones, but I was kind of like, hey, it looks like it works, but maybe it's not. But man, this thing has some squishtivity to it. When I started this project, I didn't know for sure if this was gonna work. I mean, this is a 5-ton log splitter. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, that's not a lot. I am 100% happy with this. For what I was expecting, I mean, I certainly think I'll be able to start learning the process of making Damascus, San Mai, hopefully, but this is gonna get me into a lot more forging work and into Damascus. Now, I'm not going to say that this is the end all be all. I think I'm going to play with this for a while, and if I find that I really enjoy making patterned steel, this will definitely be a step, and the next step would be making my own larger forging press. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it gave you some ideas if you've been wanting to get into forging steel. I know railroad spikes aren't the hardest steel on the planet Earth, but it's squished. I had to be careful, and I was stopping early. I wasn't maxing it out because I think if it was hot enough, if you had it like at forge welding temperatures, I think it would just smush it. So really excited about that. I'm gonna mess around with the flattening dies that I have on here too, and just kind of learn the process. Even with what little I've done, I was actually messing around a little bit off camera too. There's definitely a technique to what you're doing, and you know, you can't go as fast as you want to go. I find when I was taking huge bites, I would end up getting it too flat, and then when you go to square it up again, you know, there's not enough material to reference off of, and then you just get a twist. So definitely a bit of a learning curve I've got to go on, and now is where the real education starts and the fun begins. I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to say thank you to Princess Auto for sponsoring this video and providing me with a lovely 5-ton log splitter that we turned into a forging press. Again, if you're going to do any of this, you're doing it at your own risk. This machine was not designed to operate this way. We have gotten away, we've circumnavigated some of the safety features built into this so that we could have the ability to use 2 hands. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one, and hopefully upcoming on the channel, we'll start to mess around with more forged knives. You know, integrals will be a lot easier with something like this rather than doing it by hand, and then also into start the foray into Damascus making. All right, guys, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your views, your supports. If you have any comments about this, leave them in the description. I'll do my very best to help you out and get you whatever answer you're looking for. Cheers. Squishy, squishy.